King Robert Baratheon stood by the fire, his face red with anger and wine. In his hand, he held the letter from across the narrow sea. "The dragon girl is pregnant," he said, his voice low but full of fury. "She carries the blood of the Targaryens. That child will have a claim to my throne." Ned Stark stood across from him, arms crossed, the weight of the North heavy on his shoulders. "She's just a girl, Robert. Barely older than my own daughter. She has done nothing to us." Robert threw his goblet into the fire. "Nothing yet, but she will. Her brother is already dead, and now she has a child inside her. Do you think the Dothraki will sit quiet when they know the dragon's heir lives?" Ned's eyes were calm but firm. "So we murder a girl because of what she might do one day. That is not justice. That is fear," Robert laughed bitterly, spoken like a man who's never ruled. "This is not about justice. It's about survival. I will not wait for another war." The small council room was silent. Varys shifted in his seat, fingers twitching. Littlefinger smirked but said nothing. Renly looked down at his hands. Only Sir Barristan Selmy looked troubled, his eyes on Ned. "I won't sign the order," Ned said finally. "If you want her dead, you'll need someone else to carry your message." Robert stared at his old friend, his brother in war, the man he trusted above all. "You're my hand, Ned. You swore to serve." "I swore to serve the realm," Ned said. "Not to kill innocent children." Robert's lips trembled. For a moment, he looked like the young man Ned once knew, the one who laughed, loved, and fought with honor. But that man was gone. In his place stood a king shaped by years of hate, fear, and loss. "Fine," Robert said coldly. "The matter is closed." But the matter wasn't closed. That night Ned sat in his chambers, the letter still in his hands. He thought of his sister Lyanna, who died in a tower far from home. He thought of Rhaegar, the prince everyone said was a kidnapper and a rapist. But was he? And now Daenerys, Rhaegar's daughter, Lyanna's niece in a way. If she died, would the past be truly buried, or would it rise again, soaked in more blood? He didn't sleep that night, but across the sea, in the red sands of Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys did. She dreamed of dragons. The next morning, Ned went to Grand Maester Pycelle and took the message meant for the assassins. He burned it in his own fireplace. When Pycelle protested, Ned told him plainly, "If you say a word, I'll have you removed from the council." Pycelle, trembling, obeyed. Word of this act spread in whispers. Varys raised an eyebrow. Littlefinger chuckled to himself. "The wolf grows teeth," he muttered. But Ned's choice set a storm in motion. That same week, Robert held a feast. The wine flowed heavy, and the king's mind was already slipping. He laughed too loudly, insulted too freely. He didn't speak to Ned all evening, Cersei noticed. She sat in silence, but her eyes watched everything. The tension between Robert and Ned, the way Varys and Renly whispered, the missing message Pycelle never delivered. She knew something had changed. And she didn't like it. Later that night she approached Littlefinger. "We have a problem," she said. Littlefinger smiled. "We always do." Back in the north, in Winterfell, a raven flew in carrying a sealed letter. Catelyn opened it and read her husband's words. She knew Ned had done something dangerous. He had stood against the king. And when men do that, they don't live long. She went to the Godswood, knelt by the old tree, and prayed for her husband. Because in King's Landing, no secret stayed hidden for long. The morning after the feast, King Robert Baratheon sat in his chambers, nursing a headache as loud as the bells of King's Landing. He waved away the servants and sat alone, rubbing his temples. Ned Stark entered quietly, carrying a parchment. "I won't waste your time," Ned said, placing the paper on the table. "I'm resigning as Hand of the King." Robert didn't even look up at first. He just let out a dry, bitter laugh. "You're running back north." "I'm going home before I have to watch you kill more innocent people," Ned replied calmly. Robert stared at him for a moment, eyes bloodshot. "You think you're better than me, don't you? Just because you have that northern honor stuck so far up your ass, it blinds you." "I don't think I'm better," Ned said. "But I remember who we used to be, and I don't want to become what you've already become." Robert slammed his fist on the table, hard enough to crack the wood. "You dare?" But Ned had already turned and walked out. Word spread quickly. The hand of the king had stepped down. Some said he was cowardly. Others said he was wise. Cersei said nothing, but she smiled. That night she visited Lord Varys. "I know your little birds are everywhere," she said. "Tell me, why did the wolf burn the message?" Varys played dumb at first, but Cersei wasn't one to be toyed with. She stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "If Daenerys Targaryen lives and her child grows, everything my family has built could fall. And if Ned Stark is protecting her, then he's already made himself a traitor." Varys blinked slowly. "Or perhaps he's just a man trying to keep one more child from dying." Cersei leaned in. "Either way, he has to be dealt with." Meanwhile, Littlefinger had been busy. He was always busy, moving quietly between shadows, whispering in ears, planting seeds. And this time, he went to the one place chaos always found a home. The brothels. He met with a man from Braavos, a quiet one, the kind who killed without sound or question. He handed him a pouch of gold and a piece of parchment. "Change of plan," Littlefinger said. "We don't kill Daenerys. We warn her." The man raised an eyebrow. "Tell her someone in Westeros wants her dead. Say it was Ned Stark who saved her. Make sure she knows it. Let her remember that name." "Why?" the man asked. Littlefinger smiled. "Because chaos isn't just a ladder. It's fuel. And when dragons come to burn the world, I want to be the one who lit the first spark." Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen was walking through the market of Vaes Dothrak with her handmaidens. Her belly had begun to grow, and with it her confidence. She no longer flinched when men shouted. She no longer trembled when Khal Drogo touched her. She was becoming a queen, not just in name, but in spirit. That's when the Braavosi found her. He didn't approach. He simply left the message with one of her handmaidens. A small note sealed with wax, no symbol on it. That night Daenerys opened it. "There are those who wish your child dead. The order came from a king, but it was stopped by a wolf." She didn't understand at first. "But Ser Jorah did. Eddard Stark," he said. "Lord of Winterfell. He's the king's hand." "Was," Daenerys said softly. She placed the note beside her bed and stared at it long into the night. The next morning, she told Khal Drogo everything. He didn't say a word, but that evening, he stood before his blood riders and spoke in Dothraki. "We ride to war." Back in King's Landing, Ned was preparing to leave. He had told Sansa and Arya they would return to Winterfell. He was done playing games in the south, but before he could step onto the ship, a Lannister guard blocked his path. "You're wanted at the Red Keep," the man said coldly. "The Queen demands your presence." Ned's hand moved to the hilt of his sword. "Tell her I no longer serve her or her king." The guard looked nervous, but handed Ned a scroll. He read it. It wasn't a request. It was a royal command, signed by King Robert himself, but the signature wasn't in Robert's handwriting. Ned narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong. Up in the tower, Cersei stood at the window with Joffrey beside her. "When you wear the crown, my son," she said, "you must remember one thing." "What's that?" Joffrey asked, bored. She leaned down and whispered, "Kill the man who says no before he has time to say it again." The Red Keep was too quiet. Ned Stark walked its halls with Ser Rodrik and 2 guards sworn to House Stark. Each step echoed like a warning. He didn't trust the summons, nor the seal on the scroll bearing Robert's name. The writing was off, too neat, too clean. Robert had been many things, but never precise with a quill. As they approached the council chamber, Ned slowed. His eyes met Ser Rodrik's. "If anything feels wrong," he said softly, "get the girls out, at once." Rodrik nodded without a word. Inside, the room was already full. Cersei sat in Robert's chair like it belonged to her. Joffrey stood beside her, dressed in gold, a smug sneer on his face. The small council was present. Pycelle, Littlefinger, Varys. Only Renly was missing. Ned stepped forward. "Where is the king?" Cersei smiled like a cat. "The king is indisposed." Joffrey puffed his chest. "I am the king now." Ned narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? Cersei lifted a parchment. Robert died this morning. A hunting accident. A boar gored him. He bled for hours. Didn't your guards tell you? Ned felt the air leave his lungs. No. I spoke to him yesterday. He was alive. Pycelle mumbled something about wounds and infection. Varys looked away. Littlefinger only watched. His final act, Cersei continued, was to name me regent until Joffrey comes of age. Ned stepped forward. That's a lie. He named me Lord Protector. Cersei didn't blink. Did he? Ned pulled out a sealed document. Robert's final will. Signed and witnessed, he made it clear. Joffrey grabbed it from his hand and tore it in half. I am the king, he shouted. The gold cloaks, the city watch, moved closer. Ned turned to Littlefinger. You said you had the Watcher's loyalty. Littlefinger smiled sadly. I did. Until this morning. And then he said it. You should have learned, my lord. Never trust me. Steel came out. The room exploded in motion. Ned's guards drew their blades, but they were outnumbered. The gold cloaks turned on them. One was stabbed in the side, another knocked to the floor. Ser Rodrik fought like a man possessed, blocking blows left and right. Ned reached for his sword, but pain shot through his leg. Littlefinger's dagger had found its mark. Right under the ribs. You're too honest for this city, Littlefinger whispered in his ear as Ned collapsed. Joffrey laughed as they kicked Ned's sword away. Take him to the dungeons. Cersei didn't stop them. She only watched as the wolf was dragged from the chamber, bleeding and broken. At the docks, Arya waited for her father. She held needle in her hand, as Jon had taught her. She didn't know why, but her stomach felt tight. She didn't see Ser Rodrik return. She didn't see anyone from her father's company. Only a boy with messy hair came running. Your Lord Father's been taken, he gasped. They've turned on him, the Queen. She seized the throne. Arya didn't speak. She ran. Inside the Red Keep, Sansa was crying. Cersei sat beside her, pretending to comfort her. You must write to your brother, the Queen said sweetly. Tell Robb to come to King's Landing and swear loyalty to King Joffrey. We don't want war, do we? Sansa nodded slowly, too afraid to think clearly. Far away in Winterfell, ravens would soon fly, some with lies, others with truth. In the dungeons, Ned lay on stone, his side bleeding. The cell was dark, cold, and smelled of mould. He thought of his daughters, of Catelyn, of Winterfell. He had tried to do what was right. He had tried to stop a murder, and now he sat waiting for one of his own. Varys came to him that night. You saved the girl across the sea, the spider said. But it may cost you your head. Ned looked up. Is she safe? For now, Varys said. The Dothraki ride. War may be coming. Ned coughed, bitter blood in his mouth. Then I've started something worse. Varys tilted his head. Or perhaps you've started something better. A change, a reckoning. But at what cost? Ned whispered. Varys didn't answer. He just turned and disappeared into the shadows. Across the sea, Daenerys rode with Drogo's horde. The winds blew hard. Her hand rested on her stomach, where her child kicked gently. Westeros will know my name, she said. Behind her, a Dothraki shouted a war cry that echoed over the hills, and in her dreams, her dragons stirred. In the dark belly of the Red Keep, Ned Stark's wounds festered. Rats squeaked in corners, and his world smelled like rot and blood. The stone beneath him was damp, the air too heavy. His leg throbbed where Littlefinger had stabbed him. His pride hurt more. Every hour, footsteps echoed past his cell. None stopped. He no longer thought of rescue, only of his daughters. Was Arya safe? Did Catelyn know? Had Robb taken up arms yet? Then, on the 5th day, the door creaked open. A torch flickered in the corridor. Varys appeared again, robes fluttering like a spider's web caught in a breeze. You don't have long, he said softly. Ned sat up with effort. Have they finally decided to kill me? No, Varys replied. But you will wish they had." He paused. "Joffrey wants your head. The Queen wants silence. But Sansa begs for mercy. She writes poems about you." Ned closed his eyes. "Sansa doesn't understand the game they're playing." "She understands more than you think," Varys said. "She's playing now, too." Ned looked up. "What do they want from me?" "Lies," Varys said plainly. "A confession, a public statement. Say you were a traitor, that you tried to steal the throne. Bend the knee. Say Joffrey is the rightful king." Ned's jaw tightened. "He isn't." "No," Varys agreed. "But say it anyway, and they may let your daughters live." In the shadows of Flea Bottom, Arya Stark moved like a ghost. She had cut her hair short, wore dirty clothes, slept in abandoned corners. She had needles strapped to her belt, and fear gripped her heart like a hand made of ice. She had seen the gold cloaks searching the streets, asking for a girl with auburn hair. She had seen men hung by their necks in the market for whispering against the Queen. She had once thought of knights and heroes. Now she knew better. Now she trusted no one, except her blade. Back in Winterfell, Robb Stark stood at the head of the great hall. The Raven's message shook in his hand. The letter from Sansa was filled with strange words, pleas for peace, praise for King Joffrey. It didn't sound like her at all. He crushed it in his fist. Catelyn looked at her son and saw a boy no longer. "We march," he said. "How many banners can we raise?" she asked. 18,000, he answered. "Maybe more." Catelyn's voice was soft. "Are you ready for war?" "No," Robb said, "but I'm ready to bring father home." And so the wolves stirred in the north. Far across the sea, Daenerys stood before a sacred fire in the Dothraki camp. Her belly was round now, heavy with the child said to be the stallion who mounts the world. But her mind was already far from Vice Dothrak. Jorah stood beside her. "You understand, my queen," he said gently. "The lords of Westeros won't kneel for you. They see you as the daughter of the madman, the last Targaryen." Daenerys's eyes burned. "Then I'll make them see me as more." Behind them, Khal Drogo barked orders. The Dothraki were preparing ships. Most of them hated water, but for her, they would ride through fire and salt. Daenerys placed her hand on her stomach. "They tried to kill us before we were a threat," she said. "Now we will become one." In King's Landing, Queen Cersei sat at the council table. Robb Stark marches south, Pycelle warned, with 18,000 men. "Let him come," Cersei replied coolly. "We hold the capital, and Ned Stark is still alive." Joffrey grinned beside her. "Not for long." Cersei shot him a glance. "You will do nothing without my word." He scoffed, but said nothing. He liked to pretend he ruled. Cersei knew better. Outside the city walls, the gold cloaks sharpened their blades. Inside, whispers filled every hall. Even the birds were quiet. In the dungeons, Ned lay awake. Varys's words repeated in his head. "Confess. Lie. Save your daughters." It would be the final betrayal of his honor. But what did honor matter if Arya was dead? If Sansa lived in fear, if Winterfell burned? He reached for the memory of Lyanna. He saw her bloody bed, her dying breath. "Promise me, Ned." He had promised her truth. Now he had to consider telling the greatest lie of his life. And somewhere, on a dark ship bound for the coast of Westeros, a rider whispered to Daenerys Targaryen, "The wolf who saved you is in chains." She looked out at the waves and whispered back, "Then I will bring fire and blood to free him." They came for Ned just after dawn. The guards didn't speak as they dragged him from the dungeon. He could barely walk, so they carried him through the stone corridors of the Red Keep like a broken relic. He expected a cell, or a noose, or perhaps even a sword to the back of his neck, but instead they took him to the steps of the great Sept of Baelor. Thousands had gathered in the square below. Peasants, lords, merchants, all waiting, eyes wide with hunger. Hunger for blood. Hunger for a spectacle. Sansa stood on a platform beside Queen Cersei, pale and trembling. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked like a doll someone had forgotten to wind up. Her hands clutched each other so tightly they'd gone white. Ned was pushed forward until he stood alone. His arms were bound, his face bruised. The weight of 100 lies pressed on his chest. Grand Maester Pycelle stepped forward to read the royal decree, but Joffrey shoved him aside. "I'll speak," the boy said, puffing up his chest. "Lord Eddard Stark, traitor to the realm, will confess his crimes before the gods and the people." The crowd roared, some cheering, some jeering. A rotten apple flew past Ned's face and exploded at his feet. Cersei whispered something to Joffrey. He ignored her. Ned looked up and saw the statue of the Seven above him. The father, the mother, the warrior, all carved in stone, all cold. He thought of Robb marching south. He thought of Catelyn, holding that old grief behind her eyes. Of Bran, broken but breathing. Of Varya, lost in the city, wild and alone. Of Jon, on the wall, watching the cold come closer. He took a breath. Then he stepped forward. "My name is Eddard Stark," he said, his voice cracked but steady, "and I betrayed the crown." A gasp rippled through the crowd. "I plotted with my men to take the throne from King Joffrey. I tried to steal the crown from the rightful heir." He swallowed hard. "I am a traitor." The words tasted like poison. They burned his throat. Sansa's lip trembled, but she didn't move. Cersei gave a quiet nod of approval. Varys, standing in the shadows, closed his eyes. Joffrey smiled. "The traitor confesses," he shouted. "The gods are just, but they are also merciful. What should we do with Lord Stark?" The crowd began to chant, "Mercy, mercy." Cersei touched Joffrey's arm. "He will take the black. Send him to the wall." Joffrey's eyes lit with cruelty. "No," he said. "He betrayed my father. He tried to steal my throne. My mother wants mercy, but I want justice." "Joffrey," Cersei began, "I am the king," he snapped. Then louder he pointed, "Sir Elin, bring me his head." Sansa screamed. Cersei grabbed the boy's arm, but it was too late. Sir Elin Payne stepped forward, great sword in hand. The same blade once used to kill kings and traitors alike. Ned looked up. He saw Arya, hidden in the crowd, her face dirty, her eyes wild. She was being held back by a black-cloaked man. Yoren of the Night's Watch. He was covering her mouth. He met her gaze for a heartbeat. Then he closed his eyes. Not for honor. Not for pride. For them, the sword rose, but before it fell, the crowd exploded in screams. A blast shattered the square, a roar from the sky. The wind shifted, and then a shadow passed overhead, a winged shape, black against the sun, a dragon. On the deck of a Dothraki ship off the coast of Westeros, Daenerys Targaryen stood with her arms open. Her silver hair whipped in the wind. Behind her, the first of her dragons screeched, Drogon, wings fully grown, circling high above. "They will see," she whispered. "The usurper's line will fall. The wolf who saved me will be avenged." The Dothraki, unused to ships and waves, were silent in awe. Jorah stepped beside her. "We've arrived, Khaleesi. Not as beggars," she said. "As fire." She looked toward the distant cliffs, the land of her ancestors. "Westeros will burn. One city at a time." The dragon's scream tore through the Sept Square like a blade. People screamed and scattered. Mothers pulled their children behind carts. Goldcloaks dropped their spears and ran. Flames streaked the sky as Drogon passed overhead again. Wings spread like death itself. His shadow swallowed the great sept. Cersei pulled Sansa from the platform, eyes wild. "What in the gods' names is that?" But Sansa wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on her father, still kneeling, still alive. Sir Elin had dropped the sword. Even Joffrey looked shaken. What is that thing?" Before anyone could answer, fire rained from the sky. Drogon roared and let loose a stream of flame across the outer wall of the Red Keep. Stone exploded. Smoke rose. Chaos spread like rot in a wound. Dothraki screams followed, loud, sharp, hungry. They had landed outside the city. The Targaryen had come. In the dungeons below, Varys felt the tremble of the walls. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the echoes of fire boomed above. He looked up, eyes wide. "She came," he whispered. "Gods help us all." She came. Daenerys stood on a black horse outside the walls of King's Landing. Her silver hair glowed in the firelight. The Dothraki around her howled for blood. Jorah rode beside her. "We strike now?" "No," Daenerys said. "We send a message first." She pointed to the gate with her whip. "Break it," and so they did. The great gate of King's Landing was torn apart by sheer force, Dothraki riders charging forward, smashing through with axes, dragging guards from their posts. Panic spread inside the capital like a second fire, and through it all, the dragons circled above, roaring. On the other side of the city, Arya Stark ran. Yoren had pulled her into the alleys as soon as the fire started falling. He was strong for a man who lived in shadows, dragging her down the narrowest streets, away from the main squares. "What was that?" she gasped. "Dragon," Yoren said. "Not seen one of those in 100 years. And if there's one, there's more." Arya clutched needle tight. "They'll kill my father." "They might," Yoren said. "But we're getting you out of here." "To the wall," Arya stopped cold. "No, I won't run again. Not while he's still alive," Yoren sighed. "Then we need to find the girl inside you a sword. Because you're not going to survive in this city as a Stark." Arya didn't hesitate. "I already have a sword." In the heart of the Red Keep, Joffrey screamed at his guards. "Find her! Kill the witch! Burn her, burn them all!" Cersei slapped him across the face. The room froze. "You will do nothing," she hissed. "You've already ruined everything." Joffrey stared at her, eyes wide with rage and disbelief. "I'm the king." Cersei leaned close, her voice venom. "You were a boy playing king, and now you've woken a dragon." Outside the window, the city burned in patches. The sept was half-collapsed. Smoke curled toward the sky. "Prepare the ships," she barked. "We may need to flee." Down in the square, Ned Stark lay where the guards had dropped him. He opened his eyes. Above, the sky glowed red and black. The sept loomed behind him like a broken tomb. He tried to sit up, pain lancing through his ribs. But a hand reached out to steady him. "Sir Rodrik Castle." "Alive, my lord," Rodrik said, blood on his face. "We have to move," Ned gritted his teeth. "Where?" "To the gates. The north is coming." "What do you mean?" Rodrik looked toward the distant hills. "Robb marches, and he's not alone." Across the riverlands, Robb Stark had set up camp. Word had come from a dozen directions. King's Landing under attack. Ned Stark still breathing, a dragon in the sky. Around him, Bannerman debated, argued, and prayed. "We can't trust the girl," Lord Umber spat. "Targaryens don't fight for wolves." "She burned the capital," Rose Bolton said softly. "That makes her our best chance." Robb stood alone by the fire. His direwolf, Grey Wind, sat silently beside him. Catelyn joined him. "Your father lives." "That changes everything," Robb nodded. "We were going to war for honor. Now we go for blood." He turned to his captains. "We march for the capital. We take it if we can. Or we die outside its gates." Daenerys Targaryen stood inside the city now, riding slowly through King's Landing like a ghost from the past. People fell to their knees as she passed, whispering, "Dragon Queen, Stormborn, and Mother of Flame." Drogon landed beside her with a thud, his wings folding. Smoke hissed from his nostrils. She dismounted and looked toward the Red Keep. "Find the Lannister boy," she told Jorah. "And Stark?" he asked. She nodded once. "The wolf saved me. Now I repay the debt." The corridors of the Red Keep, once cold and golden, were now blackened with soot and blood. Dothraki warriors stalked through the halls like hungry ghosts, their curved blades slick with the memory of battle. Servants cowered in corners, whispering prayers to gods who'd stopped listening. In the heart of it all, Daenerys Targaryen moved with purpose. Her silver hair was half-braided in the Dothraki style, her clothes dark and torn by ash. Drogon stalked behind her like a shadow, his scales still warm. The keep reeked of fire and panic, exactly what she had intended. She passed under the high arches of the great hall, where once Robert Baratheon had held drunken court. Now the Iron Throne stood empty, melted at the base, blackened and bent from Drogon's fire. She didn't stop to look. "Where is he?" she asked. Jorah nodded toward the far corridor. "Alive, weak, but he's waiting." Ned Stark sat in what was once the small council chamber, a place where lies used to wear silk and drink wine. Now it stank of smoke and scorched wood. His leg was wrapped tightly in cloth, his sword leaning beside his chair. Roderick stood near the doorway, hand on the hilt of his blade. Then she entered, Daenerys Stormborn, silver-haired and proud, walked toward him like someone born to lead. But not afraid to fight, Ned rose with effort. Their eyes met, fire and snow, old blood and new. "You're taller than I imagined," Ned said softly. "You're not," Daenerys replied. "But you're alive." "I'm glad," he studied her. "You've brought chaos to the capital. You stopped them from killing me," she said. "I returned the favor." A long silence stretched between them. "I never meant to be your enemy," Ned said. Daenerys moved closer. "But you served the man who killed my family." "I did," he admitted. "And I tried to stop him from killing you." "That doesn't erase the past," she said. "No," he replied. "But maybe it shapes the future." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "Not only that, I'm here for the throne." Ned's voice grew harder. "That throne is made of the bones of children. My sister died because of it." Daenerys stepped closer, eyes sharp. "Your sister died because men feared love more than war." Ned blinked. "You knew her?" "No," she said. "But I know her son." The world seemed to stop. "What?" Ned whispered. Daenerys took a deep breath. "Your nephew lives. Rhaegar's son. Lyanna's boy. He survived." Ned gripped the edge of the table. "How?" Daenerys lowered her voice. "You raised him. As your own. Didn't you?" Ned stared at her in stunned silence. She stepped forward. "Jon Snow is Aegon Targaryen. Far to the north, beyond the whispering snows of Castle Black, Jon stood atop the wall, watching crows fly east. He didn't know it yet, but his blood was singing. Somewhere fire had called to it, back in King's Landing. Cersei Lannister sat in the last safe room the Red Keep had left. Her gown was singed, her crown lost in the panic. Joffrey raged beside her. "Why hasn't anyone killed her?" he shouted. "She's a witch. She burned our city." Cersei said nothing, because she knew it was over. The Baratheon line had broken, the Lannister name was cracking, and outside, the people weren't crying out for Joffrey, they were whispering Stormborn. Robb Stark's army had reached the gates. He rode at the front, grey wind at his side, 20,000 men behind him. The capital was already taken, but he had come to get his father, no matter what stood in his way. But what greeted him wasn't enemy steel, it was silence, and Dothraki warriors offering him passage. Inside the gates, Robb dismounted cautiously. He didn't trust what he saw. Not yet. Until he stepped into the great hall and saw his father standing beside a silver-haired queen. Ned turned to his son. "Robb!" Robb crossed the hall in 3 quick strides and threw his arms around his father. "You're alive," he whispered, tears burning his voice. "I am," Ned said. Thanks to her, he looked at Daenerys. Robb followed his gaze. "So, this is the dragon." Daenerys met his eyes. "And you're the wolf." They stared at each other, sizing up not enemies, but possible allies. Ned placed a hand on Robb's shoulder. "The game has changed." Robb looked between the two of them. "Then tell me what comes next." Daenerys stepped forward. "We end the Lannisters. We take the realm. And then—" She looked toward the north. "Then we prepare for what's coming after. The war beyond the wall." The snow had begun to fall. It wasn't the sharp, bitter snow of the north, not yet, but soft, strange flakes that drifted over Dragonstone's black cliffs. Jon Snow stood alone on the edge, cloaked in black fur, his breath turning to mist. A raven had arrived 2 days ago, from Samwell Tarly, marked urgent. Inside was a name he'd never seen written before, Aegon Targaryen. He hadn't slept since. Behind him, footsteps crunched. Davos Seaworth joined him quietly, hands folded. "So it's true then." Jon didn't turn. "I don't want it." Davos gave a dry chuckle. "Well, that's the first sign you're worthy of it." Jon finally looked at him. "Everything I thought I was, and it's gone. I'm not Ned Stark's son. I'm not even a Snow. I'm a lie someone had to protect." "You're still you," Davos said. That never changed. Jon looked back at the sea. She's calling banners. Daenerys wants to unite the realm. Sit the throne. She's got dragons, Davos said. And the people now, after what she did to the Lannisters. They're scared, but they're listening. And if I'm her rival? Jon asked. If my blood gives me the stronger claim. Davos was quiet for a long moment. Then one of you will have to kneel. In King's Landing, the air still stank of ash and smoke. The Red Keep had been cleaned, but scars remained. Entire wings had collapsed. The Iron Throne had been removed, melted beyond repair. And in its place stood a high table of carved obsidian, shaped like the Dragonstone map room. Daenerys stood at its head. Beside her sat Robb Stark, commander of the Northern forces. His mother, Catelyn, had arrived 2 nights earlier, and Arya had finally reappeared, older, sharper, her face hardened by the alleys of survival. Sansa stood to the right of the Queen, watching everything. She had become more than a frightened girl. She listened now like a ruler, with silence sharper than most swords. Ned Stark watched from a corner, arms crossed. He still wore a brace on his leg, but his voice had returned, cold and steady. Daenerys spoke, addressing the gathered lords of Westeros, many still unsure whether to kneel or run. "We have ended the rule of the false king," she said. "The Baratheon line has fallen. The Lannisters are scattered. The Iron Throne is gone." She paced slowly. "A new age is beginning, one built not on fear but fire and justice. The realm must be reborn, not through war but through unity." A lord from the Reach stood. "And who leads this new realm, Your Grace? You?" Before Daenerys could answer, a voice cut through the chamber. "No." Jon Snow stepped into the hall. The room froze. Daenerys turned to him, eyes wide. She hadn't seen him since Dragonstone, since before the truth had arrived. Robb stood slowly. "Jon," Jon looked to Ned. "Father." Ned stepped forward. "You always were in every way that mattered." Jon turned to Daenerys. "You said unity, but that only works if we stop pretending old blood is the only thing that gives us power." "I never pretended," she said softly. "But your blood, it matters." "I don't want the throne," Jon said. "I never did. But I won't kneel to anyone who builds their kingdom on ashes." The room tensed. Daenerys met his eyes, a long, hard pause. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped forward, and she knelt. "I don't want to rule alone," she said. "I want to rule with those who earned the people's loyalty. You, Jon Snow or Aegon Targaryen, are the last piece of this broken realm." Jon blinked. It wasn't victory. It was partnership. That night, the banners of the wolf and the dragon were raised together over King's Landing, but in the far north, beyond the wall, something stirred, cold. Winds howled through the trees, eyes glowed blue in the dark, and as the moon rose high, a hand, pale, frostbitten and dead, broke through the snow. The Night King had seen the fire rise. Now, ice would answer. Back in the capital, Jon stood atop the rebuilt walls, beside Arya. "Do you trust her?" she asked, watching Daenerys speak with Sansa and Robb below. "I don't know," Jon said, "but I think she's trying to be better." Arya looked at him. "And you?" "I'm not a Stark," he said. Arya elbowed him gently. "You're as much a Stark as I am. Maybe more." Jon smiled faintly. "I miss the wall." "You'll miss more than that," she said. "Winter is coming, and we're not ready." Jon looked north. The future was uncertain, but for now the wolf and the dragon had chosen peace, and perhaps that was enough until the next war.